Alright guys, Randy here from Yammer Hammers Wolverine Nation again. Today we're going to do a little bit of a clutch install how-to on a 21 Wolverine RMAX. This is obviously a two-seater version, so it's going to be a little bit easier to access the belt housing and clutch than the four-seater, a little less paneling. But just going to do a brief overview. Obviously we still have everything together today. So we're going to do a maintenance and install of the Weller clutch sheave. Received our new machine sheave from Weller in the mail the other week. So it's going to be a little bit easier. You're not going to have to clean out all the old grease. A lot of guys go to a greaseless setup. Personally, with the terrain we ride, we had some issues with the dust and stickage of the weights for the greaseless setups. So we've opted not to run those. All personal preference. If you're high likelihood of getting mud, water into the intakes, definitely go greaseless. It's going to be a lot easier to clean. However, just be noted that there is some issues with that you may have. So also with the clutches here, they'll send the spring. Weller recommends using that if you do a lot of low speed, a lot of rock crawling. It's going to raise the RPMs a lot, going to help the engagement, engage the clutch sooner. We're going to opt not to run this spring today for the kind of riding that we do. They also send you a shim as well. We're going to install the 22-gram weights today. New cam sliders as well, and they send you a little bag of tank seal for that. We still have a little bit left over from our last install, so we're going to use that today. So all in all, going to do a new sheave install, and we're going to service the secondary today. So first thing you're going to do that we just did here is you're going to take the driver's side seat out. It's going to be a couple 12mm nuts on the seat brackets to pull them off. Then next thing you're going to pull these mounting plates off for the seat. So once you get all the plastic and paneling off, this is what you're going to be left with on the two-seater. Just pull the seat paneling off the side panel, and that'll give you access to the seat bracket, the clutch intake tube, exhaust tube, and housing. So there's two bolts down there for the seat bracket. You're going to loosen those. Then that whole center seat mount will flip up, give you a little bit of access to get the clutch housing cover off. This is the cover itself here. There's 11 10mm bolts on it. And that'll give you access to the primary and secondary clutching. So we'll talk a little bit about the cage here in a second, and about the two different lengths of bolts. So to get this out, a good set of extensions, wall bolt extensions and universals and different socket sizes will really make your life easier, just because they're kind of hidden, a little bit recessed in, and it can be a little bit tricky to get to, but there are 11 of them. If you take your time, they're pretty easy to get out. So now we got the bearing retainer cage off, and that's what you're left with. On your right here, that's your primary, and on the left is your secondary. So coming back to, I want to talk to you about the bolt significance. If you look here, there's little spacer tabs on this metal cage. There's one top right, or sorry, top left and bottom right. They'll be diagonal from each other. Those will be your longer bolts. So what we're going to do next is we're going to spread the belt. If you look here, you've got these two bolt holes. You can put your two longer bolts in that came out of the bearing support in, and that'll release the pressure on the clutch there and let you take the belt off. And then after that, we're going to remove our primary and secondary. These are both 27mm sockets, or 27mm nuts. You'll need a good impact socket and impact gun to get these off. So after that, I'll let you know what it looks like then. Alright, so we just took the nuts off of both the sheave and the secondary. So you're just going to slide that out. One whole assembly, just like so. There's the main bearing there, and that's removal of the stock sheave. Just slide that out, and when you flip that over, there's, I think it's 8 Phillips head screws to pull this top cover off. So you'll take all these off. The seal can be a little bit tight under that cover to get that off, but just take your time, work your way around it. You don't want to damage that seal, but I do buy one just in case you do damage it. It's better to have an extra one or just replace it rather than having it rip and tear on you and then you need a new one. So we're actually going to set this aside, go ahead and work our way onto the secondary and service that. And then we will show you what we're going to do for servicing the secondary. And then we will get to installing the Weller sheave. So go ahead and release the pressure on the 10mm bolt. That'll compress the spring back in, then you should be able to pull the secondary out just like that around the intake tube, and that's how it'll come out. So after you pull your secondary out and you go and use whatever spring compressor tool that you like, you're going to use a 55mm socket. We used with an impact. Our spring compressor tool we actually made, so we're able to get in with an impact. So these are actually marked on the top plate with a blue mark from the factory. So you'll actually be able to see when you're spinning this off with the nut, that'll have a blue mark that'll line up, so you can actually see when you're loosening or tightening that. So these springs do have a pretty fair amount of pressure on them, so make sure to use a spring compressor tool, because if you do pull these off, you definitely could possibly injure yourself with them, because they do have a good bit of pressure on them. When you compress these, they just don't need a whole lot of pressure though to break the tension on the nut. I think factory spec is around 66 foot-pounds on them. So once you get the spring compressed a little bit, you can use a big adjustable wrench or the socket, whatever you want to use, just to loosen that. Then you'll be able to pull your top plate off, then your spring comes off, and then we're going to show you how to disassemble the secondary. So once you went ahead and pulled the retainer nut, spring, and the seat off of the secondary spring, you're going to have this retainer cup here on the bottom. Sometimes they're a little hard to get off there, but usually you can pull these right off, and then you'll see these series of pins. You're going to want to go ahead and get a little pair of needle nose pliers, and these will easily just pull out. You can just keep working your way around, just taking your time to pull these out, and that'll work on getting our secondary apart. I think there's 6 of them total. And we got one more left. And everything should just come right apart, just like that. So next thing we're going to do here is we're going to remove the grease seals on the secondary. You can get a sprint or a grease seal remover tool, or you can use a flathead screwdriver. Carefully work your way around and pop it out. They're as simple as that. We did get new ones from OEM Yamaha. Here's the part number for them. You're going to need 2 of those, one for the upper seal and one for the lower seal on the back of the secondary. And all we're doing here is just cleaning everything out real thoroughly here, getting all the old grease out. We pulled the top O-ring off. Going to pull the lower O-ring off here in just a minute. And for reference for that part number, here's the OEM part number from Yamaha for those as well. So you're going to need 2 of the O-rings and 2 of the grease seals to fully service the secondary sheave. And like I said, just work on getting all that old grease out, and we're going to replace that with tank seal. So now we're going to start reassembly of the secondary now that we got it torn apart, cleaned. So these are going to be the grease seals going back in. So if you actually look at the seal, there's a little spring inside the cup there, a little recessed edge. I like to put a little bit of tank seal on that. That'll go down just as you saw there. So we'll pack that little recessed edge full of tank seal. And like I said, the recessed edge will go down just like that. So then next what we're going to do is we're going to seat the seal in place. We just reused the spring nut off of the secondary. And you just work your way around there, and it seats itself nicely in there. Not going to hurt anything with that. And that's one grease seal installed. And going to do the other side of the secondary, we went ahead and re-greased our seal with some Tink Seal. You line that up, we'll put our spring nut back over that and tap it in. So all we're doing is going around here on the where the O-ring seal will sit, just packing that groove full of Tink Seal. Just using your finger. It is a little bit messy, but after that we're going to pull the bottom O-ring out, go ahead and do the same and replace it. And just put the new one back into place there. And all we're doing here is just going around, hitting all the sliders with a little bit of Tink Seal, getting in all the grooves, just putting a light coat on the inner and outer edge of the sliders. Like I said on the last video there, we did go ahead and got the second O-ring reinstalled there with Tink Seal behind it. Put a light coat of Tink Seal around the O-ring as well. And like I said, just going around the whole thing here. Just getting a light coating on it is all you want. And now that we slid the two plates back together, going to get the pins back in here. There are 6 of them here. It can be a little bit finicky to put in. So just working our way around the secondary, getting all 6 pins in. Now you got the slider pins back in. Just going to take some Tink Seal and pack the grooves in. This can be a little bit of the messiest part. Just be careful not to get it on any of the face plates of the secondary at all. So if you are doing a full primary sheave and a secondary kit, I would definitely recommend getting one of the tubes of Tink Seal that we're using over here. If you buy the Weller kit with just the sheave itself, they do include a little bag of Tink Seal for the roller weights and slide plates. It'll do everything you need for the sheave that they offer. But like I said, if you're doing the secondary, I would definitely recommend buying a little tub of it, because you'll probably use the majority of what Weller sends you in the kit. Even here, I'm still using a pretty fair amount of the Tink Seal, which is okay. I mean, you definitely want to make sure that if you're going to this extent of servicing it, you want to have adequate grease in it when you're putting them back together. And that's all 6 of the sliders. I'm just going to clean up any of the excess grease here, and then we should be about pretty much ready to reassemble. Now, just putting a light coating of Tink Seal on the inside of the spring cup here. And then we'll be able to drop that on just like so. And that's pretty much the disassembly and reassembly for the service of the secondary sheave. So the next thing you're going to do now is basically just reassemble your spring onto there, put your spring cap back on, use your spring compressor tool, torque the nut down. Like I said, I believe it's 66 foot-pounds in the manual. Then after that, you're able to go ahead and reassemble it back onto the machine. Alright, here we are, just reinstalling the secondary back on the machine. Got our spring compressed, got the nut back on. Like I said, 66 foot-pounds for that. The secondary nut calls for 181 foot-pounds of torque. We've honestly just been doing them with the impact guns, and we've never had an issue with any of them coming loose. And that's all there is for the secondary sheave disassembly, maintenance, and reinstall. Alright, and here's the old primary sheave off of the stock RMAX, followed by the Weller Racing one sitting in the back. So the only thing we're really going to reuse off of this is the top retaining plate and the screws. Have a new seal. Typically, if I were to service this, I have new seals that I would replace these in the OEM one, but being it's a brand new sheave, we're not going to have to do that. Basically, all we're going to do is put our 22-gram roller weights in from Weller. Tank seal. They also sent us new cam sliding plates as well. Like I said, really, if you're doing a swap out, this is a pretty easy job to do. The only thing really just going to reuse is your top slider plate. If you want to reuse the seal, if you don't nick it up, that's fine, but for the couple bucks, it's just as easy just to order a new one and have it just in case. So we're going to disassemble this top plate, and then basically we'll go ahead and get the new Weller sheave cleaned up and ready to go. So when you pull the sheave apart, this is really all we're going to reuse and have to clean. That's the top retainer plate, just like that. Pull the cam plate off. We're going to pull these old sliders off, clean this up. We'll put some tank seal on our new weights in the new one, drop the sliders and cam plate on, and we'll pretty much be ready to reassemble. So we got our cam plate all cleaned up. We want to get all the grease off of it. Make sure you get in all the sliders as well underneath. So that's what it'll look like after it's clean. So Weller sends these new cam sliders with us in their kit. So if you look right there, there's a little notch on that. They recommend in their instructions to run that down facing the weight. So you're going to put a little bit of tank seal on it. These already have a greaseless coating on them as well, but you're still going to put a little bit of tank seal on the insides of the sliders. And they are going to go in the cam slider plate, like this, with that notch facing down. So we got our new Weller sheave already greased and assembled. These are the 22-gram roller weights. If you want to run this as a greaseless setup, you would basically just drop these in as so. But we're running tank seal on ours. We went ahead and reinstalled our new O-ring on that as well. So basically all there is left to do is put a little bit of tank seal on the cam plate sliders, put them on the cam plate, and drop them in and tighten everything up. So next what we're going to do is we're going to install the cam plate and the cover to the primary. So just a quick little note as well is Weller includes a shim with the kit as well. Per their instructions, it does say it helps improve the low end a little bit. It says you'll decrease the top end slightly, but we're running the 22-gram weights along with the machine sheave, so we are going to opt to run that shim. So basically what you'll do when you're reinstalling this one of the shaft on the machine is you'll put the collar on first, and then that shim will go on right after that. Then after you install the primary, you'll just torque everything down. So what we're going to do here is just install the cam plate back onto the sheave. And that just presses down into the sheave there. And then once you get everything lined up, you can just press the faceplate back on, just like that. And then we'll put our screws back in and we'll get ready to install it on the machine. So the next thing we're going to do here, and I forgot to say about it on the secondary service as well, but wipe down the faces of the contacts on the sheave where the belt is going to ride. You don't want to have any residual grease or oils or anything on that. So we want to use a lot of brake clean to make sure that stays nice and clean. Having my helper here hold the back of the plate, because if you don't, you would turn this over, your cam plate and roller weights and sliders, everything's going to fall out, and you're basically going to have to reassemble everything together. So on a side note, make sure you keep pressure on the back of the plate to keep everything from sliding out. So like I said, we got this nice and clean now with some brake clean. I went ahead and already installed the collar and the shim on the machine, so we are actually ready to go ahead and install this on the machine. So as you can see, the collar and shim are already on there, keeping pressure on that plate. You're going to go ahead and just slide that back on the collar of the machine. Just like that. So next thing we're going to do here is we're going to remove the bolt out of the secondary sheave, and then we're going to spin the clutch and get the belt seated back in. So this bolt here, Weller actually provides with the kit. So if you're doing the clutch install, you can actually just use the one provided. If not, you can use the ones, like I said earlier, out of the bearing support cage. Those will also work as well, but Weller does include one for you. So after that's out, go ahead and just spin the clutch while the machine's in neutral. And that'll seat your belt and tighten everything up. As you can see, everything spins freely, everything's torqued correctly. 181 foot-pounds on the secondary sheave, 225 I believe on the primary. Like I said, we've just been using them with impacts. We've never had one come loose, but Yamaha does make a special clutch holder tool that you can use for those if you do feel the need to hit them with a torque wrench. But like I said, we've adequately been doing them with impact guns for the last couple years, and we've had no issues with them. So that is the complete disassembly, service, and install of the Weller clutch and the secondary. So basically we're just going to put the bearing support back on the housing cover, hook up the intake and exhaust tubes, and just put the plastic back on.